Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel, to my wonderland. And today in our coffee time together, we have 15 movies that you will love if you love Stranger Things. As of today, we've been waiting over a year for the new season of Stranger Things. And if you're like me and you love Stranger Things and you binge watch those seasons the moment they go out, then welcome. Probably you've already watched or are aware of the movies that I'm going to mention here. We all know that Stranger Things is heavily inspired in the works from Spielberg, John Carpenter, and of the novels by Stephen King. We all know these, we've all seen the references, and so I'm just here to mention 15 movies that you should have watched if you love Stranger Things. Like I said, I'm pretty sure you all know about these ones and you've probably watched most of them, but in case that there's one or two that you missed, I gotcha. Let's start by the super most obvious one, which is E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and this is an American science fiction movie by Spielberg. The movie was originally created, based on an imaginary character that Spielberg created in 1960 after his parents divorced. A group of botanist aliens secretly go to Earth because they want to collect samples from some plants in California, but government agents appear in the scene and the aliens have to flee in their spaceship, but they left behind one little alien, and that is E.T. A little boy named Elliot discovers E.T. one day while he's playing with his friends, and he decides to take him home, but the alien kind of runs away from him, but he realizes that he loves Reese's Pieces, so that's how he lures him into his home and he hides him there. There are many connections. This is probably the movie that has the most influence on Stranger Things. We see kids in bicycles. Mike hides Eleven from his mom, as Elliot did with E.T. And also Reese's Pieces would be, in this case, the Eggos from Eleven. Also, there are government, people with the hazardous suits. We also have the moment of the wig and the dress that it is used to disguise. E.T. did it, Eleven did it. There's also a moment where E.T. is watching television and being like absorbed by everything that is coming out of that little box, and we also see that from Eleven. There are so many connections between Eleven and E.T. Obviously, E.T. is an alien, and Eleven, by what we know, it's just a kid with special powers, so it is not really an alien, it's not another species, but the connections are there, and this is definitely a movie that you need to watch if you love Stranger Things. Then we have Poltergeist from 1982, and this is an American supernatural movie. We follow an American family that is being hunted by ghosts, and they communicate through a television, and at the beginning it's kind of playful, it's kind of fun, until things start to go downhill. Carol and the young daughter just gets abducted. She just disappears one day. The parents don't know where she is, and they kind of get this medium, this kind of exorcist that is supposed to bring her back. And one of the basic things that we have here is that Carol Ann disappears, is abducted into this other reality, and we have Will that is being taken to the upside down world, and in order to bring them back, in both movies we see that they use a rope, and somebody goes in attached to this rope and is trying to pull the other person back into the real world. Carol Ann's mom just goes in there without any kind of protection. She just goes in there like a real trooper, and in Stranger Things we see that they are kind of using these biohazard suits and things like that they're kind of like a little bit more prepared, a little bit more high-tech. Then we have Firestarter from 1984, and this is an American science fiction horror movie, and to be fair, I could name more Stephen King movies that are connected, but we're gonna start with Firestarter because it's the one that I believe has the most connection to Stranger Things. So we're following a couple, Andy and Vicky, and when they were younger they participated in some medical test experiments things, and basically they think everything's fine, they marry, they have a daughter, and then they realize that their daughter is able to set things on fire just with her mind. And basically she becomes a threat, and there is this enigmatic kind of agency called The Shop that is after her. So you see here where I'm going. We have 11 and this organization that is also after her to use her for her powers. Yeah, in both cases we see how destructive telekinesis and how destructive mind powers can become when you piss somebody off. Both girls are around the same age, both have powers, both have been scientifically experimented on. Then we have Carrie from 1976, an American supernatural horror film. And spoiler alert, this is not the last Stephen King movie that I'm going to be mentioning here. This is very Stephen King, you know, heavy, but it is what it is. And we follow the story of Carrie. She's a teenager and everybody makes fun of her. And then one day she discovers that she has this power, this telekinetic power. So Carrie one day decides that she's going to take revenge, and you know, all hell breaks loose when she decides to go after the people that have done her wrong. So 11 doesn't really show this revenge against people that make fun of her, but she is very protective of the ones she loves and she will kill for them. And we also have here two girls with very powerful telekinetic powers. Then I also wanted to mention The Monster Squad from 1987. This is more like a American comedy horror movie. This is one of the ones that doesn't have like a super straight connection with Stranger Things, but it's a group of kids that have to fight evil, and it kind of gives you, you know, this kind of vibes. It's also from the 80s. It's basically 5 young kids that find themselves fighting against Dracula, the Mummy, the Jillman, and Frankenstein while they're, you know, trying to look for this special amulet. And it's kind of like an adventure, fun, horror, comedy story of kids that, you know, go in an adventure and have to fight evil. So in a way, you know, if you love Stranger Things, you might really enjoy this one. Then we have Super 8 from 2011, and this is an American science fiction movie. We are in 1979 Ohio, and a group of kids is filming a zombie movie with a Super 8 camera. So while they're filming, there's this train and it gets derailed and they survive the accident, but they soon realize that this was not an accident. So they start to investigate and they find out that it has, you know, a connection with aliens. So we have again a group of kids. The movie is based on 79, which is basically the 80s, even though it was done in 2011, but it has this kind of 80s vibe, and also includes alien and kids investigating, you know, to see what happened and what kind of like government and other organizations are trying to keep quiet. So I really enjoyed this movie, and it is one of those newest, you know, movie releases that totally gave you 80s vibes. Then we have Stand By Me from 1986, and it is an American coming-of-age story based on the short story from Stephen King called The Body. It is a story of 4 kids that they hear somebody talking about somebody that was mysteriously killed, and they decide to start, you know, a trip to go and see the body. So again, we have a group of kids that is going in an adventure to investigate, and there's also a coming-of-age story. And even the Duffer Brothers used lines from this movie actually to cast the younger, you know, characters from Stranger Things, so they had to use lines from this movie. Then we have The Thing from 1982, and it is an American science fiction horror movie by John Carpenter, and we are even able to see a poster of this movie in Mike's basement. A group of American researchers go to the Antarctica, and while they're there, they discover this kind of extraterrestrial thing, and they call it The Thing. And this organism is able to assimilate and imitate other bodies, other people, and so it comes to a point where they don't know who to trust anymore. So there's a lot of paranoia, and they all think that the other could be, you know, taken by the Thing right now. And it is a classic, it is a great movie, and we can see that the Stranger Things series is also inspired by this. Then I have an honorable mention here, and that is The Lost Boys from 1987. So this movie, it is an American horror comedy film about 2 brothers that move to Santa Carla, and they soon realize that there is something weird, something wicked in this town, and the younger brother starts to investigate together with 2 guys he meets at a comic store, and they find out there is a group of vampires in that town, and it is just fantastic. I just included it here because again, we have kids, investigation, supernatural beings, and just because it's such a movie that it has this 80s vibe to the point, and I truly believe that you will enjoy it if you love Stranger Things. Then we have Ghostbusters from 1984, and this is an American comedy fantasy film. We follow a team of scientists that lose their job at university, so they decide to start this kind of service to fight the supernatural, and they are being called the Ghostbusters. They find a gateway to another dimension, and that releases the evil into the real world, and they have to fight it to save the city. And so you see here also the similarities. There is this gateway to another dimension, like we have the gateway that is created to go into the upside down world. Plus the kids also cosplay the characters from Ghostbusters in season 2. And please, let's remember that scene where Mike and Lucas are fighting because they both want to be Venkman, and Mike is kind of implying that Lucas has to be Winston just because he's black, and that was hilarious. Then we have Scanners from 1981, and this is a Canadian horror science fiction movie. We have here a world in which some men and women are born with telepathic and telekinetic powers, and there is this organization that only wants to use them for their own purposes. So we have here the same case. 11 is trying to be used by this organization for their own benefits. However, even though 11 doesn't make heads explode, it's not so gore or graphical, we do see that sometimes when she kills using her powers, there is some blood coming out of the eyes or things like that, and also her nose bleeds. But it is kind of like the same premise, that she has been born with these powers and she has the ability to kill people just with her mind. Then we have It, also known as It Chapter 1 from 2017. It is an American horror science fiction movie based on the Stephen King novel by the same name, and it is being directed by Andy Muschietti. And there is no denying that it had an influence in the Stranger Things series. You know what it is about. It is about a group of kids that find themselves fighting this entity called It, and one of the faces of this entity is Pennywise, which is the one that they get to see the most because most kids are afraid of clowns. And there is a very direct reference to It, even though they do not use the name Pennywise. There is a scene where they are 100% talking about Stephen King's It. There is this scene in the car where Bob is with Will, and Bob shares his story that he used to have nightmares with a clown called Mr. Boldo. And they even mention in this part, in this scene, that the clown offered kids balloons. And if this is not enough for you to believe that this was an It reference, Bob goes as far as pretending to be the clown and says in his clown's voice, "Hey kiddo, would you like a balloon?" Like, if this is not a Pennywise, It, Stephen King's reference, I don't know. This is 100% a Pennywise reference on your face. Now, probably they could not use the name because of trademark issues, but this is clearly Stephen King inspired. Then we have The Goonies in 1985, an American adventure comedy film. So The Goonies is basically a bunch of friends that find themselves in a great adventure trying to locate a treasure. It's kind of like a treasure hunting thing. And while in The Goonies, the bunch of kids are looking for a treasure, in Stranger Things, what they're looking for is Will. It's a person. It's Will. And, you know, it still gives you kind of these, you know, vibes of a group of kids standing up together, trying to figure it out, you know, a mystery. And if you like Stranger Things, I'm pretty sure that if you've not watched The Goonies, you would love it. Then we have Alien from 1979, and this is another movie that it's not basically an 80s movie, but the sequels are, and this is an American science fiction horror movie by Ridley Scott. The similarities here, well, I would say that we have, you know, with the creatures, some similarities, like the xenomorph. It's kind of like Demogorgon, or, you know, compared to the xenomorph, we have goo, you know, we have this kind of like slime in both things, you know, in the xenomorph, and also we see that a lot on the victims on the upside down world, as well as the fact that we have some kind of alien entity that puts their eggs in our bodies for them to cook and then come out when they're ready. We see that with Will when he comes back from the upside down. We see in one of the end scenes that he is puking out something that goes down the drain, and that's also what happens with face huggers. They just leave eggs on you because they're so nice. So in both cases, the human body is used as an incubator for alien species. And the last one, number 15, it is not exclusively a movie, but hear me out, it is The X-Files, and this is technically a television series, but they did get a couple of movies. And you know, I thought if you love Stranger Things, you're probably gonna love the X-Files, even though some things didn't age that well. But you know, if you're open to kind of older special effects, you're probably gonna love this TV series. We follow the story of two FBI agents, and Mulder is kind of like the one that believes in these things and he's sure that the supernatural exists. And then we have Scully, and she is kind of not a believer. She's very skeptic about all these things, and they have to partner up and work together to, you know, figure it out what happened in a series of really weird cases that are, you know, attached to the supernatural. And they're here behind me. There you go. Here are my TV series box collection in my pops. And it is definitely a TV series that I absolutely loved when I was a kid. I used to watch this with my dad, and I was a fan because I've always loved the supernatural. So if you've never watched this series and you love aliens and the supernatural and all of these, you're definitely gonna love it. So these are 15 movies that you should know of or should have watched if you love Stranger Things, because it's, in some cases, you know, there are movies that have 100% inspired the Duffer Brothers to do Stranger Things, and other cases it might be just that they have these, you know, weird connection, kind of like a loose connection, you know, group of kids investigating, things like that, that if you love Stranger Things, you might also love these other movies. Let me know down below what you thought about this list and which other movies or even series would you like to include here. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Give the video a thumbs up for support, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more coffee times with me. In order to find me, you know, the social medias, as always, the links are down below for you guys, and I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye!